Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila! You get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
All of us use consultants. We all use them almost on a daily basis. For those of you who took a cab here, you used a consultant to get here. I know a cab driver doesn't seem like a consultant, but they're doing a job to provide you with a service for a period of time. You're paying them for that period of time, and they have the expertise to get you from that point A to point B, right? So they're a consultant. And there are those micro moments in your life where you're utilizing consultants, whether this morning when I had to call Delta Airlines and rebook my ticket for tomorrow night, and they walked me through a process of being able to get, instead of going from Las Vegas to Boston on Thursday, I had to do it for Tuesday night. She took her expertise about my current flights, as well as the lowest cost way for me to get home. So I didn't have to pay a $423 ad collect, and she found me a flight that actually got me a voucher for $68. So I utilized her expertise to do that. And what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk to you about these kind of examples of how we use consultants, not in our everyday lives, but in our jobs to be able to actively be able to get expertise, for a cost, of course, to be able to get things done that we couldn't do ourselves. We needed other help to do. We have with us Steve Brink, who was my first real boss back more than 30 years ago, and he's one of my best friends today. Steve Brink.
Thank you. And he was my last employee. No, after you have to deal with him. But no, I'm Steve Brink. I'm president of a software startup called uFlexRewards. Prior to that, I was CEO at a company called Air Inc. and sold that company to a Japanese multinational and decided whether to retire or go do something else, and I did a startup. Prior to that, I was at Mercer, where I led one of the 6 global businesses. Prior to that, where I met David, was at Towers Bearing, which is now, that's the precursor of Willis Towers Watson, and one of the precursors.
One of them, yeah. One of the many, yeah.
And prior to that, claim to fame was a vice president of another software company called Criterion, where it was the first compensation management software product back in 1987.
I was still in college.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway, go ahead, Dave.
And so my name is David Turetsky. I'm vice president of consulting for Salary.com. I'm also the host of the HR Data Labs podcast. And soon on Amazon, you'll be able to buy my first book, which is Welcome to the World of HR Data Labs, which is actually a graphic novel somewhat similar to Dilbert, but it focuses on the trials and tribulations of a company who are going through the pandemic and the things that they're trying to deal with HR and HR data, and how do they solve it every day. But my life has been as a consultant. My first job out of college, actually 2 weeks out of college, I got hired by Towers, Perrin, Foster, and Crosby, which predates you by a year or two.
Yep.
And I was doing statistical analysis of weighted job questionnaires, which is very old. It's also old to say that I was working on mainframe focus. Does anybody remember mainframe focus? There you go. And doing statistical analysis of pay programs in SPSS. Anybody remember SPSS? And then I transitioned to Morgan Stanley and was comp analyst, so I went from consultant to practitioner, and I did the practitioner thing for a bunch of years, and then I became a consultant again. So I've lived both sides of the fence, and the way I actually act as a consultant today is in reaction to the consultants I had to hire and deal with on the practitioner side. And so if you hire me today, you're going to get a much better version of me than if you had hired me before that. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you about that today. And a lot of the things we're going to talk about, we can go on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about things that you should expect from a consultant. We're also going to talk about the reasons why you might hire a consultant. And then we've created these top 10 tenets. I wanted to call them the commandments, but that sounds a little bit too religious. And then we're going to talk about some of the examples of how all of these things happen, and then at the end we're going to summarize it for you, okay? So, our first poll today, go into your app like we asked you to, and we're going to launch the poll. How would you grade the consultants that you use? A, outstanding. There's a prize for those people. Okay. B, exceeds expectations. Something tells me this is going to be normally distributed.
Yes,
okay.
I think so.
C, meets expectations. Yeah,
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Almost meets expectations. Okay? And fails to meet expectations. Wow. Oh, you nailed it, Steve.
You did.
Normally distributed.
That is.
That. You don't need to have a statistical degree to know that most people answered meets expectations.
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
Good context, because that means you're somewhat satisfied. You're not over the moon satisfied with the consultants that you use.
First confessions is you don't want to necessarily reinvent work. And this is a great slide by Robin Farrakhan of Farrakhan & Byers, one of the best exec comp consultants there is. And the reason why I took this, it's in a lot of different contexts, but the context I want to talk about is just the one that's highlighted in yellow, compensation consulting. Because what you all really think about, or what you expect as a role of consultant, is that advocate for the shareholder, right? And for the stakeholders. But also that trusted advisor. It's somebody that's going to listen to your problems, right? That's what a trusted advisor is. They might not know, they are an expert in one thing, but they're not an expert in everything, and they admit it. But they are connected to other experts. And they don't know, and they'll be honest with you to say they don't know, but they'll actually find an expert who will help you. That's what a trusted advisor is about. And then lastly, the role that you'd like to see is that whole fact-based opinions. It's based on facts, not opinions, or not what someone else was doing or what something they read. It's fact-based on the kind of pay performance and process. But then what you sometimes see, which some of you might have experienced, right, around that, is the ego. Somebody that doesn't listen. They want to listen to themselves, right? Anybody relate?
No, we don't know anybody.
No, nobody at all. But again, you get that ego, and it's all about them, and it's not about you, the actual client. And so also you get that management trill. So somebody that's just, hey, they're willing to please you. Whatever you say, they're just going to confirm. They're not going to give you that honest advice, right? So it's just almost kind of a rubber stamp. And then sometimes you also get that paint by the numbers. What I mean by that is it's a methodical way. They're not necessarily listening to your needs, but it's a consultant that says, I'm going to go through this process no matter what. Right. I'm going to paint the 1 in red, I'm going to paint the 2 in blue, etc. Right?
Has anybody dealt with something like that, where they have a process, they're going to go through the process no matter what? Yeah, we've seen that.
Exactly.
So our second poll is now up, and it's, how do you use consultants the most? Again, this is your opinion, we're not going to hold against you, but this is what you think about how you use them. We're going to try and use the app if you want. No? It's not there? All right, forget it. How many of you use consultants as a trusted advisor? Someone you can call that you know is going to give you the answer that you're hoping for? A few of you. Okay. Need an expert. You need somebody with expertise. Okay. Somebody with an external opinion. Going outside, getting the opinion, bringing it back in, so you can go to your people and say, hey, look, they said it, not me. Supplemental resources. You just can't get the job done. Okay, a few of you. Remember, even if you use something like Fiverr is one of those places where you're hiring a consultant to do a job for a period of time. And by the way, Fiverr is not where you pay $5 for somebody, if that's what it means. You pay them what it's worth, but you actually can find people around the world who do this stuff who you can actually see the ratings and reviews of. How about outsourcing projects and process and work, where you just can't get it done, you need someone to do it? Okay, a few of you as well. All right, well, that makes sense, makes total sense. That gives us context for the next few things we're going to be talking about. When we talk about hiring a consultant, and these are the things that we're going to be talking about, we are going to talk about ways in which you can address a problem in a very rapid way. I was just hired by a company to be compensation management for them for a period of time because both of their compensation resources in corporate had to go out on emergency family leave. They lost them right before doing merit process and doing incentive processes. If you can relate, I apologize profusely. This is the worst feeling in the world, where you have one person who's left in comp or in HRIS who can give somebody else the data, but you have to train that person on how to do the merit process, how to do the variable pay process, and get it done quickly. And by the way, we got it all done, and by the time they came back, we were ready to actually create the letters and get it all to happen. But that's a really horrible feeling. But when you can find someone who has those expertise right away, it's really wonderful. The second is getting people who can do things that your team can't do. And there are a lot of topics around today that you're going to hear about throughout this week, like things like pay transparency. You're going to hear about things like pay equity. And you may not have anybody on staff who can do those things rapidly, accurately, and be able to provide a voice, especially with expertise. You'll need that person to come in and do it. And they will also bring somewhat objective advice. As Steve was saying before, sometimes you get people who have what they want to tell you, and sometimes they'll listen to what you have to say, and they'll be able to take their background, their experience, and be able to provide a synthesis to be able to understand not only your problem, but also put it in context for what is the world doing about this right now. And talking about the trusted advisor, that doesn't just happen. You typically meet somebody either earlier in your career, you know them, you've been with them for a long time, and you believe in them. And you will carry them forward with you as long as you can, as long as you need to. That trusted advisor is somebody that I would hold on to tightly, because that's the person that's going to help you succeed in your career and enable you to grow. And hopefully they stay being a consultant.
Almost operates like a mentor.
Yes, just like we had that relationship where you mentor me at home.
And you mentored me.
It's only for podcasting.
Yes, that's true.
And last but not least, providing focus. And what we mean by that is, sometimes you need someone to tell you you're focusing on the wrong things. They look at your picture objectively. You may have hired them to look at X, and they go, do you realize that your house is on fire? Yeah, I can install that TV for you, but do you realize we actually have to put out the fire first? And that is incredibly important for you if you're trying to focus on something. They may not necessarily be a trusted advisor yet, but they're certainly going to be after they help you put out the fire, right? And what we've tried to do in context here is put some fun. Anybody love physics? That one person, thank you for being honest.
Not too many HR love physics. We know that.
Compensation. Yeah. but hey, listen, we're all comp people here, right? We can all talk turkey. Yeah, we just use these as kind of examples to kind of go off on. So we're going to go through each one by one.
All right, let's do this. So the first one is, what goes up must come down.
Anybody remember that song?
I guess karaoke's later tonight.
It is, yes.
Okay, all right, okay. That was 1959 or something, so 80% of you weren't even born yet. That's nice, okay, great. Okay, but that's a law of physics. What comes up must come down, right? HR, no, doesn't work. We're against the law of physics. Why? Well, the stickiness of pay. How many of you have voluntarily left the job to get paid less? Come on. Change your career. No. Startup. Work-life balance. That's it. That's good. That's good. That's
actually the best answer.
Yeah, that is a good answer. Good answer. We planted you, didn't we? Anyway. But it's silly, right? In terms of the stickiness of pay. Now, we probably have all experienced kind of freezing pay, right? That's hard enough. I've had probably on 2 handfuls where I've had to actually go and tell somebody that they had to decrease their pay. Not a very easy conversation. Why? Because compensation, sometimes it's about their self-worth, isn't it? They get emotional. Your pay is what you're worth. It's like, well, no. Let's now move that over to the data space and remove that emotion to talk about the data. You are above market, or whatever the reason is to reduce that pay in terms of that, right? So that stickiness of pay is always there. So what continues to go up, right? That stickiness is not coming down. And the market, when you're benchmarking, we all benchmark, right? So what do? Well, we benchmark, we find out what the market's doing, and what do? We increase pay. And we're always doing what? We're always chasing that pay. And what is it doing? Going up, going up, going up, isn't it? So that whole benchmarking in the market is always moving forward is very, 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 very important. Then you have the impact of pay transparency laws. Now, with this, the pay transparency laws that are happening throughout the United States and different states are doing slightly different things. Europe's going to go live for total reward, by the way, in 2025. Be prepared. And then all of a sudden, so what's going to pay transparency? Well, there's some of us that believe, yes, it's the right intent, right? The right intent to be fairness and equitable and the like, right? Good intent. But then also, what's going to be a possible outcome? Oh, going to start ramping up, isn't it? Okay? What did we see with pay disclosure rules, executive compensation? That is exponential growth in exec pay, right? Because again, all of a sudden you have a peer group there, and all of a sudden, well, let's remove them from the analysis, right? All of a sudden, then that CEO, the next year had a good year. Well, look at them, underpaid. I'm going to be matching here. So what happens? Just a constant ramp up. And to be honest, the exec comp consultants they're kind of enabling that to some extent, aren't they? But that's in terms of the impact of pay transparency. Do you want to add something?
I would say that to me, it's a good thing anyways, because we've been consistently underpaying many groups, and this is a way for us to pay them what they should be paid. Those groups need to get paid equivalently to what other people are getting paid today.
100% agree. But again, the idea about unintended consequences, which is the next law.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
The law is for every action, there is an equal opposite action. Let's talk about these. So reward strategy. There are some unintended consequences. If you set up your reward strategy and you set up incentives, and your incentive program is based on financial measures and other measures, what happens? We have some examples of some bad apples, don't we? Enron at the millennium, right? They were falsifying kind of revenue targets, right? In terms of this, because they were wanting what? They were wanting to get more options. This is great. Enron's going through the roof. So we're moving it really good. So all of a sudden, with Enron, find out, blows everything up, goes bankrupt. Everybody lost jobs, everything. Really sad consequence. Some actually with fraud actually had to go to jail, right? Wells Fargo, more recent, 2017 or so, right? What was happening? Setting up, well, if you're incentive to create new accounts and get new accounts, your incentive actually will grow. So they set up fake accounts to do that. Right? Boom, what happened with Wells Fargo? A lot of people no longer there. United Airlines, a slightly different twist in 2017. Remember that person that violently was taken off the plane? I mean, this is pre-COVID, so we probably forget about those things. So violently took off the thing, and the CEO stood up and says, well, that was justified. Yikes! So much for customer service, right? You know, in terms of that. The stock price, boom, went down. Then the last Equifax, I have the Equifax, that was 2016, I think. Data breach. Oh my gosh, we're going to get hit with our stock price. What does the CEO do? Oh, before we go public, let me go ahead and sell some shares. Right? Holy smoke. So all of these examples are what? Are examples where there's good intent to set up these nice financial targets and some other targets. But you're going to be measured on what? People are going to be focused. So some people are going to be where you're trying to focus on these broad-based financial rewards to other rewards like ethical behavior, customer service. But if the only real kind you're really measuring is those financials, But they're going to focus on the financials. Screw everything else, right? I'm not saying that's everybody, but these are just bad habits. This will happen again. Because on paper, it looks great. Oh my gosh, if we set this up, we're going to incent people, they're going to drive, they're going to do this and that, and the stock price is going to go through the roof and we're all going to be rich. Right? And that's not necessary. So you've got to have those kind of unintended consequences. You have to have a 360 lens around those outside of those financial ones.
And so the point of that is that when a consultant comes in and starts looking at the problem, they're going to help you look at some of those unintended consequences of being able to set up the plans. Now, I'm not going to tell you that in those 4 circumstances, the consultant wasn't the one who put the plan in place, because I don't know. But nowadays, we are very focused on making sure that when you have KPIs that you're trying to drive to, that those KPIs have fail-safes that don't start those types of balls rolling down the wrong lanes. Because what we're trying to do is set you up for success and trying to build something that's not only scalable, but that meets the consequences or the financial goals that you're trying to get to. So hopefully with you and your team, you're giving us that information necessary. You're giving us all the information, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, necessary to understand the reasons why we're coming in and changing the plans, and then what are the audiences of those plans, and then how do you necessarily work with them to be able to set them up for success. How many of you work with sales teams that love to find loopholes in how you set up a plan? And that's what we need to know, because when we're setting up, whether it's your commission plans, your variable pay plans, we're going to have to work with them to make sure that we work those loopholes out. Because if you don't tell us about the loopholes that had existed in the past, that had gotten them into trouble and you into trouble, we're going to fall into that same consequence and probably have that same issue happen.
And measures change behaviors. They really do. You all have a big impact on that. I can give you an example. When I was at Mercer was around the millennium. I was running the US business, and Mercer was very geographically run, and through acquisitions and other things. And our clients would say, they bring up a France survey, they bring up a Brazilian survey, they bring up a US survey. They look like different companies. It was horrible. It was horrible. And so we weren't doing very well with global companies, or at least we as in the Mercer sense. And so what Mercer decided to do was we actually said, if we're going to globalize one business, kind of the data business and the software business make sense, right? So they did that. But they didn't change the reward system. So what ended up happening is the Brazilian lead, a US person would sell a Brazilian survey at $2,500. And I used to have hair and it used to be brown. Because I had so many conversations that say, well, who gets the credit? I sold it. I should get the $2,500 by credit. The person in Brazil, we did all the work. Why are we? Oh my gosh, you know how many battles? Battles after battles. So I did a proposal to say, let's take that global business and take it outside and propose a new reward system that would say, we're going global. It's based on global. You would think now that Brazilian head and US head were best of friends. Oh yeah, sell more. Can I come to the US and sell more? The incentives changed overnight. In 7 years, the business tripled, became the most profitable part of Mercer, and arguably the #1 data provider in the world.
By the way, you don't work at Mercer anymore. Just
you don't?
No, you don't. You have to sell Mercer.
Darn.
Was there anybody at Mercer?
But that was an example in context that I was used to. I did work for them.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
And you're still doing a great job. You should go down to their booth and ask them for commission on it.
I do. So.
How many of you have gotten to the stage where you're hiring a consultant and then the consultant says to you, are you really ready to do something here? I can't tell you how many times I've sold an assignment, I've started with a kickoff call, and then they said, yeah, we're going to do this in 2 or 3 months. Why not now? Well, we're not ready. That's better, that's more mature than doing the kickoff call, getting everybody on the call, starting the project, and then saying to them later on, you know you're not ready, right? You're not ready to go. What do I mean by not ready? First of all, I mean they don't have all of the data necessary to do the assignment. They haven't gotten buy-in from everybody. They're just not prepared to move forward. And what I mean by prepared is they haven't done their homework. When you hire a consultant, we don't just learn everything just by selling the deal. That's when everything starts kicking off. That's when we start learning about what the real problem is. Because just getting the deal, okay, that sets up some context. But now we need to get all of your data. We need to get all of the documentation. And if you haven't done all that work to get that together, we can't do it for you. Now, we can. In fact, when I go into a client, I tell them I will sweep floors for you, if necessary. And I'm serious, I will. When I was that comp manager I was talking about for that company before, I literally did the mail, remember mail merging? I did the mail merge from Excel to Word. It actually works better today than you remember it. It actually does work. And I'll do that for you. The problem is, the reason why I had to do it and they had to spend billable hours on it is because they weren't prepared to do it. And they didn't give us the templates. We had to do the templates ourselves. We had to take all the data we had from all the processes and put it together into Excel. Yes, Excel spreadsheets, and put it all together and get it to the stage where we would send it to them and they go, no, these other ones, you have to put them in French. Okay, and then we had to do all that and get it all translated and whatnot. My point is that when you hire a consultant, remember, the job isn't over for you. You are a stakeholder in this, and you need to be prepared to be able to actively work with us to be able to get the job done. And it's not just you. There's other people involved in that as well.
Yeah, I'll just add another example of this. A software company wanted to do total reward statements. Oh, some other software companies, they said total reward statements are great. So let's go do one. So set up, spend all the money, getting it all ready, and boom. Well, wait a minute. How are we going to communicate all this? What's going to happen when we get all those questions about why they're paid the way they are? And they're just, so they spent all this time and money setting up a total reward statement that didn't go live. Because they didn't have the communication. They weren't ready. And those are just examples that happen. So you got to ask those real questions, go through the entire process, just like what Dave was saying.
So I know you know about inertia, right? It's getting started. Getting off of your tush to get something to happen. And what we're talking about that is that when you're starting a project or when you want to hire a consultant, one of the hardest things to do is to get not just you moving, and you might have a burning need for it, but to get everybody moving. What we also find is that even when you hire us and we get all the information and we provide you that information, are you willing to do anything with it? How many of you hired consultants, they would give you something and then not use it? Come on, no, that's not true. 1, 2 people? Come on. I'm going to call BS on all of you because I know you've done this, because it's happened to me. I've worked with companies, I've given them incredible stuff, and then they've gone, yeah, we just can't do it right now. You just spent tens of thousands of dollars getting this done. Yeah, you know, it's great, but we're not going to do it right now. And that's because what we've done is we've given them stuff to help them make the change. But they didn't sell it internally. And so they're not ready to actually make a change. And this is problematic, especially as we were talking before about some of the big things that are happening right now, especially around transparency, as Steve was saying. You don't have a choice. You have to make a change. You have to do things. If you haven't updated your structures since 2018, if you haven't updated your job description since turn of the century, people now have a right to see their description. People now have a right to know what you're judging them on. People now have the right to, in some ways, to see the market data. They can ask for it. What are you going to do? If the match that you have is from 2018, how are you going to explain that? Oh, well, we've aged it a couple of times. Do they know what that means? No, they don't. So when we come in and we help you create the process and the way in which you're going to then be able to get this out there, you will have to have done your homework, and we're going to talk about this several times, to talk to your leadership team and say, hey, guess what? We've got to do this. We're hiring somebody, we're going to do this now. If you have objections to it, tell me now, because otherwise, we're going to be afoul of the law, and you don't want to pay those fines. Should I ask if anybody's actually paid fines? Because you were in California. There are fines, right, for not being transparent? All right, just wink at me if but the point is that this takes everybody in your organization to stand behind you, because you're going to be the agent of change, but they have to be willing to make a change as well. So when you hire someone, how many of you get competitive bids? Okay, I've been the recipient of this many times. I'm sorry, David, your price is just too high. Wait, what? I just quoted you 250 job market pricing for $10,000. What are you talking about? How is that too high? How are you going to do it? Well, we're hiring an intern and they're going to do it for us. So that's not hiring for fit, it's hiring for price. I will tell you, I'm going to be expensive when you hire me, but I'm also going to work my butt off, and I'm going to give you hours that I don't owe you, because I want to make sure that you're getting satisfaction with what I do, and you can go on Yelp or whatever. I'd love Yelp reviews. I'm not on Yelp, but I'd love it anyways. And be able to be the person who I turn to say, hey, David solved a problem for me that I couldn't solve myself, and he did it in a very conscientious way. Because every single company I work with, I want them to be a reference for me. But when you hire on price, what are you getting? You're getting a great deal, probably, but you may not be able to use it. And so what you need to do, and by the way, I'm not saying you should just hire me right now because I'm really expensive, you have to really make sure that the person that you're hiring is going to do what you need them to do. And sometimes that's not going to be the cheapest. Sometimes it's going to be the most expensive. And I know with costs cutting the way we are, in an environment where we are, that's not going to be something that's palatable. But I will tell you, you do get what you pay for, especially when we're dealing with compensation issues. And especially when we're dealing with the regulation environment that we're in, you will get what you pay for.
It's about value.
Absolutely, it's about value. How many of you value the relationships that you have with your colleagues that are consultants? Have you ever asked them for a discount? Seriously. Have you ever asked them for a discount? What have they said? Yeah. If you have an established relationship with them, they might give you money off. Of course, they're going to have to grovel. I will have to grovel. Because I'm the CEO of my own business, I will tell you that you're going to get a good deal or you're not going to get a good deal. I'll also tell you that because of the way I work, I'm going to have to cut your hours back. You're going to get all the hours, believe me. But I have to do that. But you're going to get it anyways. Hire for fit. Hire someone who you trust. Hire someone who you know is going to give you the work. Because if you just hire on price, you're going to get what you pay for. And the second, you're not going to get the same work product for every consultant. Some consultancies work on the method that you hire somebody and then you get a team of other people who come in underneath, who do all the work, and that's their delivery team. We do it too, but I'm there every meeting. I'm there working with them every single hour to make sure that they're delivering for you. I'm the one who's got my name on the line, so I'm putting my reputation and I'm putting my hours against every single client that I work with. You have anything else to add to that?
No, just on that last one is that you think like these big consulting companies that everybody, you hire somebody in San Francisco, you hire somebody in New York, you're going to get the same result. It's not true. Unless there's a really predefined kind of methodology that's within there's an example I can remember where a company actually hired somebody on the West Coast and the East Coast to do some market pricing. Came up with different answers. More art than science, isn't it? It's embarrassing, right? So just realize your eyes wide open. Confession. All right.
Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast. A free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today.
On this one, opposites charges attract, well, like objects repel. So we need diversity of thinking. So often we get myopic, we get narrow vision because this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we do. This is us. We just kind of do the same thing. We've been doing that for a long time. We just keep on doing that. So it's like, then you start asking, well, why'd you do this way? Well, I really don't know. There was a company in Arkansas that had a 99 element merit die chart grid. It's like, really? It's like, and they go, well, that kind of goes back. And they were asking other people, and well, that was the CEO like 30 years ago that wanted it this way. It's like, well, why now? Why? But so you want that diversity of thinking, have different views to kind of question what you're doing. That's a good thing. It's going to make you better, right? It's going to make you better.
I have an anecdote about that. Hopefully you'll follow me here. One of my closest colleagues, when I worked at a company called Workscape, he told me the story that he loves roast beef. And his mother and him used to make roast beef every Thanksgiving. And they would always cut the ends off. And one day he said, I love the end. Why are we cutting it off? Has anybody heard this story before? Because I told it many times. And she didn't know the answer. So she said, call Grandma. Grandma knows. So he called Grandma and he said, Grandma, why do we keep cutting the ends off the roast beef? I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. And she said, well, because my pan was only this big. And in order to be able to get the roast in the oven, I had to cut the ends off. So if you don't ask the question why, you don't know whether it's meaningful to you. Why do we do what we do? The pan is too small. Is that really a good reason to cut the ends off? By the way, the ends are really delicious. Eat that.
How often is like, you read something, it's an article or even a presentation, and all of a sudden it says, wow, that sounds great. We should do that ourselves. But you have different context, right? You have a different business strategy. You have maybe different objectives. Doesn't mean maybe the concept might fit, but you just can't cookie cut and take that, whatever they've done, and put it to you. It's just you have a different culture of work, of how you get work done. All of that context is important. Context is everything. So just because peer companies are doing this in a benchmark doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you, right? And that's something you got to question, especially when somebody brings in, oh, best practices. This is the best practice. You should do this. Best practice for whom? Right? Next, we can do it ourselves if we have the technology. Hey, just give us technology and we're fine. No. Doesn't work. Does not work.
And a lot of people do that with Excel, right? They'll say, we don't need manager self-service. We can do it in Excel. How many of you do that? Sorry.
They don't want to raise their hand.
It is. Thank you for being honest, yeah. When I put this together, I said, when it goes back to making a change is hard. How many of you love working the way you work? And if somebody else came in and said, you have to do it differently, the first thing you're going to think about is, oh, I hate that idea. Because it feels like it's a loss to you. Like, a lot of you work hybrid right now, right? Or you work from home. I work from home. I literally wear the same thing every day. No, I actually have multiple of it. But I wear the same. If I had to go into the office, it would feel like a tremendous loss to me. I would not like it. In fact, I'd hate it. And I can only go in for a couple hours because I have to drive all the way up to the head office in Waltham, Mass, and then drive back down because I have to pick up my son off the bus. They don't care about that, but that's what I have to do. So it would feel like an absolute loss to me if someone came in and told me that's what I have to do. Because when somebody who thinks they're an expert on something tells you you can't do what you've been doing in the past, like using one survey source as your ability to create a composite to then be able to do your structure development. You should use more than one. Oh, geez, that means I have to match to more than one survey. Or that means I have to match to 3 or 4, because I can't get, because we're unique, and there's only one survey really. Well, yeah, maybe with our corporate jobs. But that feels like a loss to you, because now I've lost control. Now I have to go do something else. But you have to realize that sometimes taking out of your comfort zone is actually not a bad thing, and there's logic to it. There's a reason why someone's suggesting that. It's not just because. As Steve said, sometimes people, especially consultants, pull the word best practice out of their shelf, right? They say, this is what other people do. How many of you think we're unique, there's no business like us in the world, we only do this way, and that's it, right? I've heard that a million times. But the answer is that sometimes in certain processes, you can do it similarly. And you have to get out of your comfort zone sometimes. And I think the greatest example of that is with pay transparency. We've been doing it wrong for so long. And actually, I'm giving a presentation on pay transparency tomorrow at SHRM. And one of the things I've been thinking about is transparency has been there for many years. We've been publishing pay ranges internally, horizontally, meaning to people in the same grade structure. We've been telling them what their grades are. How many times have we trained them on, though, what that is? Have we ever done employee communications to say, what does a midpoint mean? How do you interpret where you are in the range? Do you need to care about what the word compa ratio means? Because it's so meaningful to your increase. Have we ever done that? Has anybody ever done that? Oh, well, congratulations. I really applaud you for doing that. When I build manager guides and I build employee guides on pay because of pay transparency, the first thing I do is I cut through that compensation crap we always use, like midpoint progression, salary structures, like those words that don't mean anything to an employee, because now they're very meaningful to them. Because when they're getting their increase, their merit increase, and it's different from a couple percentage points because they're in one zone versus another zone, that's meaningful to them. So we have to talk to them about that. But when you get told, you have to start telling employees this kind of stuff. It's hard, but we have to change. It's meaningful.
No, I just add this second one about planting seeds does not guarantee success. You know, one of the things that companies now are looking at rewards more holistically, really total rewards, right? And it's the whole trend is, you know, how do you personalize? How do you do that optimization of total rewards for every individual about their perception of that value that they get from these different reward elements, right? That's a growing theme. And so some companies, in terms of, do you actually just want to plant the seed and do a pilot? So we had a consumer goods company, over 100,000 employees across 100 countries. To try to implement that overnight is going to be too much. But you can plant seeds there. So what they did a division where they said, okay, you have guaranteed comp, and you can move money into variable comp. What you want. Now, would anybody move guaranteed comp, $10,000, over to variable comp, $10,000 that's at risk? Anybody?
If I could make more.
Great question. Well, it's only $10,000.
If I could make more.
Exactly. So what they ended up doing, so for every decrease in guaranteed comp, you got 1.25 as an opportunity target, not guaranteed, right? Amazing results. What happened with that? They did it individually because they wanted to test this out, which is a great way. Piloting and testing things out first with a small group is a great way to try things out. So what they ended up doing, the end result was 50% of the eligible in this division said, you know what, I want to wait and see. You know, I'm going to keep my leverage as it is, but I'm going to go, you know, just keep it going as it is. But I love the choice, so sometime next year, maybe I can change it. Then there was two tails. 25% said, yeah, I'll actually take that to earn more. You know, this whole that we were talking about just at the main thing, you know, a 1% doesn't really drive behavior.
No.
But if all of a sudden you're moving some money within guardrails, you couldn't go to zero salary, but moving that over to somewhere your opportunity is significantly higher, that could be a positive. People valued that. So when you looked at it from a thematic perspective, guess what? What type of employees were that? They were actually more later stage employees because they valued maybe wealth accumulation more. But then on the flip side, on the other 25% did what? They actually took variable, which you could do, take variable and actually bring it over to guarantee, but at a 0.75 basis. And when you looked at those 25%, again, it wasn't 100%, but thematically, those were early stage career people. Because why? They were valuing cash more than this variable. That's stability. Whether getting a mortgage, daycare, crazy daycare, talk to my grandkids. It's like, oh, wow, I don't talk to my grandkids. I talk to my kids who talk about their grandkids. Daycare. Anyway, so for that perspective, it's like very interesting. But now they can assess, would that make sense for the broader company? That's what, in terms of doing a plant, planting those seeds can be really helpful.
I just got this mental picture of your grandkids going, Grandpa, you wouldn't believe the content. They can't be dead.
Well, one of them, actually, she's a trip.
It's like that.
She's a trip.
Wow. As we talked about before, sometimes it's hard to change. Inertia. It's sometimes really difficult, even if you're getting that expert, a trusted advisor to help you, it's hard to change what's been done before. We've been doing this way for 30 years. You know, the person who's still here implemented this 30 years ago. But what happens is what we found is that when you tell people why and you educate them as to why, you can get them off of what has always happened. Because there's a reason why we have to get off. Something's not happening the way it needs to. Some legislation has been introduced. Something's different. We now have to move. So one of the things that consultants can help you with is actually being able to build, whether it's change management, whether it's communication program, an education program, you don't actually have to hire someone to fix something. Sometimes you can use us to help educate, whether it's educating the board, whether it's educating executives, whether it's educating managers and employees. One of the things that we can do, because we're a third party, we're not you, they'll listen to us probably, maybe somewhat, a little bit. And I mean by that it's sometimes some people will listen to you, sometimes it'll resonate with them. But what we have to do as the advisor, as the person who's coming from outside and looking in, as long as we get from you how communication has to happen, then we can help you find out what resonates with the people internally so change management can happen. How many of you have an internal change management team that HR can utilize? I saw some people roll your eyes, which really tells me a lot about your change management team. Sometimes we can help you with that because whether you can leverage your change management team or whether we can actually just reach out to them to say, tell us the kinds of communications that work at your organization. We're going to be the experts in being able to create the data, create the understanding. Then your change management team can help us, whether it's with videos, whether it's with things inside of a store, whether it's flyers to their homes, whatever resonates with your people, let us help build the content, let them help it get resonated out, because they're the experts in your organization in being able to connect with the right people or connect with people in the right way. We can't do it all, I'll be honest with you. We're not perfect in every way. Consultants try. We actually might even have communications teams. But you guys are going to have the people internally who are going to be the champions for making this work. So we're going to leverage them to make it happen. Sometimes that's your leadership team. Sometimes that's employees who can help us resonate with the rest of the employees. We'll need to work together is what I'm saying. So when we talk about resistance to change, you guys aren't resistant to change, are you? I heard no. No, we change all the time, right? Especially lately. When we had to stay home, everybody had to stay home during COVID, right? Sometimes we were home with our spouses. Sometimes we were home with our boyfriend or girlfriend. We were definitely home with our kids. That change was really hard, but we had to do it. At work, sometimes we resist change, and we talked about this before, because we've been doing things the same way for years. You get your participation materials, you fill them out, you send them back in. You're usually doing the same surveys year over year, right? It's our habits. We'll get into it, whether that's April or May or whatever. You get them back, you analyze it, you do the QA work, whatever. You send it back, you get the results, you analyze it, you get ready for September for the upcoming merit. We get in our head these things, and sometimes we don't want to change, but we actually have to. I hear this all the time. I don't want to change. I don't need to change. We're unique. The reason why we do this is nobody does this. I said this before. Nobody does this. We do this. It becomes a battle cry. I can't tell you how many times I laugh. Internally, I never laugh at clients. But I laugh because I hear this from every company in the same damn industry. We're unique. Really? The company down the street said the same thing to me yesterday. Of course, I don't say that with my external voice. I say that with my internal voice. But you're right. You are unique. You have unique leadership, you have unique problems, you have unique issues. But don't make it a battle cry, the reason why we're not going to change. Because that's horseshit. Pardon me, I apologize for anybody who doesn't like bad language. It's horseshit though. Sometimes we have to change because we have to change. Something's happening that makes us or forces us to change. We have to do it. We can't keep doing what we're doing, or we'll get sued, or we'll get in trouble with the DOL, or we'll get in trouble with employees, or we're going to lose money. We have to change. And I'm just here to tell you that if a consultant tells you they have the answer, they're liars. We don't know what the answer is. We don't have a drug for every problem there is. And sometimes we're going to be wrong. That's another confession. We had to fill out a thing saying we're going to have confessions. We haven't talked about myths yet, though. No. We have to do that. We're liars. But seriously, folks, the answer isn't every consultant will give you an answer that's the correct answer. Sometimes you do need to say, are you sure? Do we really need to do that? And the first place I would turn would be your legal counsel, especially if it's something that could actually have to do with regulations or laws. Turn to your legal counsel and say, does this make sense to you? There's a reason why you pay him. And sometimes you actually have a labor attorney on your payroll. Does anybody actually have a labor attorney in-house? Excellent. Do you have anybody have relationships with labor attorneys that your general counsel utilizes? Great. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, I hope that your general counsel has someone they can turn to, because you will desperately need that, especially when we're talking about transparency. And I think I'm right in saying that not everybody's in California, right? Right. But you all have operations, or at least one person in California, right? No. Okay. Do you have anybody who is in any state that has transparency laws? Oh, you're so lucky. Well, even, was it Hawaii that now just adopted it? Yeah. So it's going to come, and if you see the map, not everyone's going to have a pay transparency laws, but if you have at least one employee or somebody who works, they don't even actually have to live in that state. They could work in that state too. But that's why you have to have a good attorney to help you with those issues, because we might give you advice that might be wrong. And you need to test it. Not everything we're going to say is going to be right. So check our work.
Okay, so just our final tenet of the law of physics applied to compensation in HR is that you've got to seek out counsel of the most ardent critics. I mean, one of the things that there was a company that actually says, you know what, our IT is the worst possible people that we have to get approval for to do anything with any kind of technology. But there are some companies that, we got to stay away from IT as much as possible because they're going to be a barrier, right? Well, you've got to bring in those early on. You've got to, because otherwise you're going to go down the line, and guess what? Then it's going to slam the door on you. So having that is really, really, really important. You understand who those critics are, and that goes back through anyone, it's a business leader or whatever, who's going to slam the door on certain things because they don't want change, but be able to make it happen.
So as far as tips go, when you're hiring a consultant, be honest with them, especially in the beginning stages. Don't hide anything because it's going to come up and bite us. And we talked about this yesterday. If you're not honest about and I think we're going to get to this in the next slide too, so I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but look at these tips. They make sense, right? They're kind of obvious. We saved the last obvious stuff for the end too. The last one, need to be agile. You guys know what agile is. I'm not just talking about development. Be able to make changes fast in a project with a consultant. Yes, the consultant should also be agile and be flexible as well. But you should be as well. The company should too.
Yeah, just like on Scope Creek, I always use a triangle, and it's 3 Ds, right? Delivery, dollars, and deadline. You get to pick 2. You can't pick all 3 because it changes the shape of the triangle and it becomes an insolvable equation, right? Oh, I want all this additional work, but I want the timeline, the deadline to stay the same, and I don't want to pay anymore. So you get to pick 2 of the 3, right? The 3 Ds, delivery, what the outcome is, right? What the dollars are, and what the deadline is.
So one, why don't we skip the next slide and just go right to questions? You guys have questions? You want to hit the next slide? Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, let's hit the next slide. You need to spend time with your consultant. Don't think we can do everything ourselves. Now, the consultant may say, don't worry about it. We're going to go away for a while. We're going to come up with all the answers, and then we're going to give it to you. That's not a consultant you should work with. Have the consultants show their work. Have them show the math to you so you can do it for yourself next time. Make sure you're honest with them about all the problems, because otherwise it's going to hit that triangle that Steve was talking about. Give access to your internal leaders. Allow the consultant to get their phone numbers, to talk to them, to interview them, to find out their side of the story. So it's not saying you're going to misrepresent. It's just saying, let's let them see or have an opportunity to speak to the consultant to try and solve the problem. And the last thing, prioritize the things that have to happen first. Again, if the house is on fire, you're not going to fix your salary structures until the house is not on fire anymore. Like fixing your data. How many of you have looked at your data before you go and do market pricing to make sure that people are in the right jobs, that the job descriptions are still relevant, that the market pricing is still going to be relevant? So when you start creating those structures, they're going to be accurate.
All right, let's hear it for David.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.